It's spooky season, and the only thing more spooky than ghosts and ghouls perusing around our vicinities is knowing that the bureaucrats of college football will determine who are the four best teams in the sport later tonight. If you're brand new here, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. I talk NFL, I talk MLB, I talk NHL, I talk NBA, but I love talking college football, and if this is the type of content you enjoy, this is the channel made for you. So hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below who you think are the actual four best teams in the sport. Tell your friends, your family, your mother, your sister, your brother, the drunk guy in a Waffle House parking lot, your pastor, the devil himself, any trick-or-treater who's coming to your house tonight about this channel. Because if we get to 1,000 subscribers by November 15th, I will shave my head live on air. We do live shows Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We're going live later this afternoon, so you're not going to want to miss out. Hit the subscribe button, tell everybody about this channel, and let's talk college football. So, college football playoff rankings will be unveiled for the first time tonight, and we're going to have some questions. Who actually is deserving of the number one spot? Who feels like the best team in the sport? And also, which team is basically going to sneak its way in based off of its laurels and also just kind of its branding? Well, we're about to find out. So I'm going to tell you who I think are going to be the 6 teams mentioned in tonight's playoff rankings. Now, number 6, and this is where it gets really controversial for me. Number 6 is Oregon. Oregon does not belong at 6. Oregon, I think, has just as strong as a case as Washington and Florida State and Michigan, all to be in the top 4 because of their dominating win against Utah. On the road, I might add in. Might be the most impressive victory in college football this year. Not the best victory, not the best in terms of scheduling, but the most impressive. Because you don't walk into Rice-Eccles Stadium against a Kyle Whittingham team and just completely lay down the hammer for 4 straight quarters. That doesn't happen. And so we've seen as Oregon has drastically turned a corner in the last 2 weeks since losing to Washington, a Washington team that for, I would say, about 3 quarters, they outplayed. And now they're looking like a legitimate threat to go run the table through the Pac-12, finish the year off 12-1, and be the Pac-12 representative. They have the quarterback. They have an amazing offensive line, which also, can we give credit to Dan Lanning for that? Because if it's brand new, you have, I think, 1 returning starter, not to mention you went out in the transfer portal and added in very stout names, and you've done a great job on the defensive front. You have one of the best and most underrated receivers in college football in Troy Franklin, arguably the best running back in the Pac-12 in Buckeyes Irving. They're legit. And if they continue to do what they're doing, they belong in the playoff. Same thing with the number 5 team, and that would be Washington. Washington right now is playing as if they're just riding high off of that victory in Seattle. And good for them. They're allowed to do whatever they want, but this is where you're going to see them get tested. Starting this week throughout the rest of the year, this is where Washington earns its bread and butter to prove to everybody, hey, we didn't just mess around and get a win over Oregon. We meant business, and this is the business that we're going to deliver in January. Because they got games against USC, which, regardless of what you think of that defense, their offense is potent. And if you allow them to attack, they will dismantle you. They play against Utah. Utah's defense is one of the best in college football. And then they have 2 very under-the-radar games. One, the Apple Cup against Washington State, and another against Oregon State. And Oregon State is not going to be the representative of the college football playoff, but they are a good enough team to probably still sneak their way into the Pac-12 title game. And if not even there, they're still a team that's going to garner enough interest because of how well that they've played offensively with Damian Martinez and how bad this defense has looked at times. So if Washington runs through that schedule with Michael Penix Jr. just doing what he's doing, and they pick up the run game, especially in the red zone with Dylan Johnson, and they find a way to play at least complementary defense, they've earned their spot in the CFP, but they've also remained undefeated. And if you're undefeated in the Power 5 conference, you're getting into the CFP. There's no other way around it. So Washington at number 5, I have them higher. I actually still believe in this team a lot more than other people, but I understand what the committee's probably thinking. 1 ranked win against a very good Oregon team, not at the same level as the other 4 that we're going to mention. Number 4, I think because of everything that's going on, will be Michigan. Michigan has not, quote unquote, played anybody. And I hate that saying because if you don't control what happens, like, I'm sorry, you don't get to pick who the hell you play. It's just scheduling. If everyone else sucks around you, that's not on you. It's what you do when you play those teams. And what has Michigan done? Think of a football. Think of Michigan as Lucy. And think of every other team as Charlie Brown. And they just yank the football away when they give them hope, and they just fly. And they just hit their head. And now they're in a coma. And now they're slowly unraveling and figuring out, do we have to sign the DOA? Because that's what's happening when you play Michigan right now. They're methodically bullying you in the trenches. They're playing exceptional defense right now, primarily in the secondary, which does not get a lot of credit. They've done a good job of holding opponents outside their end zone. They're, I think, number 2 in the country or 3 in the country when it comes to scoring defense. And they have a quarterback that knows what he's doing. And I'm not saying that he's elite by any standards. In fact, I would say J.J. McCarthy, of all the quarterbacks in the running to potentially win the Heisman, has the weakest case based off of stats. 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But he's completing over 77% of his throws. In his last 3 games, he has 8 touchdowns against 0 interceptions. He's been sacked 5 times in the last 3 games. 4 games, I think he has, if I'm not mistaken, 10 touchdowns against against no interceptions. So the guy is just playing clean football. And you still have 2 great running backs in Blake Corum and Gavin Edwards. You still have a good receiving core. I still love what you have in Colson Lovefield. You're in a good spot if you're Michigan. And again, the schedule bodes well for you. You have 2 very tough games ahead against Penn State and then Ohio State. And if you get those wins, you're undefeated, and an undefeated Big Ten champion's not being left out. Okay, number 3, because now we can actually talk about somebody that matters, at least in terms of what they've done. I think you go give the nod right now to Florida State. And the reason I say Florida State is because of every single game that they've played that's meaningful has lost a little bit of its flair. Now, I'm not saying that Georgia can't have that same argument, but the difference is Georgia is the 2-time defending national champion, and Florida State last year won 10 games for the first time since Jimbo Fisher was coaching on the sidelines. So there is a difference here. The game against LSU was phenomenal. And I don't think that anybody can take that away. But you have to realize LSU at times has looked sluggish since. And the standard that we hold LSU to is completely asinine, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. The problem is, when we talk about LSU, they should be at least known that if you're a 2-loss team, okay, well, who are your losses to? Fortunately, that's not the way the committee thinks. When you look at Duke, you say, well, who are your losses to? Because if you played very exceptional in the first half, and then the second half, you kind of just ran away with it. If you were full of Florida State, and then if you were Duke, you just completely shit the bed. There's no other way to put it. But you lost to Louisville. And then you look at the final game against Clemson. And Clemson, I get it. It's on the road. It's in Death Valley. It's in Dabo's backyard. But this is not a good version of Clemson right now. They're 4-4, and they're struggling. They are struggling to hold out hope. And now you're seeing this team slowly unwind, and it's looking like 7-5 is a possibility. 6-6 is a possibility. Or 2022 Texas A&M has decided to mask itself and go for Halloween this year as 2023 Clemson. That's what we're talking about when it comes to this Clemson team. So, unfortunately, the wins don't really do benefit for a team like Florida State. Still a very good team. I still think that they can go undefeated. They got a trap game against Miami. I don't care what anybody says about the Hurricanes. If you allow Mario Cristobal to play up to his standard and coach up to his standard, you will lose that game. And you still have Florida on the schedule, and that game's in Gainesville. So there's still trap moments for the Seminoles, but currently they still have, in my opinion, the best shot to go undefeated in the ACC and represent the college football playoff. 2, Georgia. Okay. Georgia might be number 1 in the AP poll for the 20th consecutive week, and I give them credit. They have played their best football over the last 2 games. And I would definitely say in this past game against Florida, a 43-20 win. You don't just hold your hat and say, oh, well, it's Florida of old. No, Florida has turned the corner. Now, I'm not saying they're anywhere near the Urban Meyer days or even part of the Dan Mullen start, but they are a team that is playing better football and more complimentary football. They have a quarterback that seems to get the buy-in from the coaching staff and Graham Mertz. They have a defense that's played up to its standard for partially at times this year. They have a really good wide receiver, number one, in Ricky Pearsall. They have a great Joker-type player in Eugene Wilson, who's going to be a stud next year. But still, this is Georgia. And Georgia, without question, showed the world, hey, you wanted to think that we were going away quietly? Think again, motherfucker. That's it. Plain and simple. I'm not going to say the word on air, but you get what I'm trying to say. This is a team that right now still has one of the best run defenses, and they've drastically fixed that overnight. They've played extremely well in pass coverage this year. They've done a good job of pressuring quarterbacks into making mistakes, and now the offense is finding its rhythm at the right time. You have Ladd McConkey stepping up in place of Brock Bowers. You have Deshaun Edwards now back fully healthy, opposite of Kendall Milton. Carson Beck is not getting the respect he deserves because the man is absolutely a meticulous machine, just going crazy. He's having a great time working in Mike Bobo's system, which Mike Bobo, at least at this point, could say, hey, he scored 40 against Georgia. There's something to hold your hat on there. This is a team that's dangerous, and this is a team that without question belongs in the CFP if they can go undefeated or even lose a game and still win the SEC title. So you can't count them out. The difference here is that they don't have a top 10 win, and that's why Ohio State's at number one for me this week. Ohio State has 2 top 10 wins, and at the end of the day, there still is a very good argument that you will have Notre Dame go 10-2, maybe even 9-3, but probably I would say 10-2. And you would probably say at worst, Penn State's 10-2. That's what you're going to have. And those are 2 games that maybe won't put you in the top 10 of the AP poll or the CFP rankings tonight, but they will be in the top 15. You can't count out Notre Dame, and you can't count out Penn State. So you have 2 wins against 2 of the better teams, one of which is a great rushing attack. Did you watch Audric Estime against Pitt? Did you watch that guy? He went off. Did you watch the way throughout the season so far Penn State's defense has looked? Did you see what Drew Aller did on that final throw against Indiana? They're good teams. They're very good teams. And Ohio State manhandled them for the most part. And what's really interesting is also they've been doing this without full capacity. They don't have a healthy Travion Henderson. They finally got him back, and look at what happened with the run game against Wisconsin. They're still missing Emeka Egbuka. Well, look at how Cade Stover stepping up in his place across the middle of the field, and how you're getting Julian Fleming to play up to a certain standard. And yet Marvin Harrison Jr. And Marvin Harrison Jr. right now should not be a dark horse. He should be in the contention status for Heisman Trophy winner. He is without question the best wide receiver prospect I've ever seen play the game. And even though there are flaws, Kyle McCord still has 1 mental mistake per game. You still are allowing third downs to be aggressively attentive. You still are giving up 1 chunk play. It's very evident. This is an Ohio State team that's been battle-tested. This is an Ohio State team that has proven its worth. And this is an Ohio State team that's earned the right to be number 1. You can't say that about any other roster in college football because no other roster has 10 wins. I mean, 2 top 10 wins. No other team has that. So I think the community rewards that tonight. I think they have the best resume in college football. I think that does enough level of success for them to say, yeah, that's where we're going to go. And then here you go. Let's see what happens the rest of the way. Ohio State has a shot of losing the game, maybe even 2 in my opinion. And if they do, Georgia's right there in the wings. So is Florida State. So is Michigan. So is Washington. And honestly, I'm going to say something that I think a lot of people are starting to get on board with, but they should have been for a while. Oregon wins that game against Washington and Seattle. They have a shot of being number 1 team. They really do. And I think that they would be number 2 on my list no matter what. So they have it. That's how I think the college football playoff rankings pan out tonight. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Florida State 3, Michigan 4, and just on the outside looking in, both Pac-12 teams, Washington and Oregon. Don't miss out. It's spooky season. But what's really spooky is just how close this race could be toward the finish line in the month of November. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.